Hey everybody, JDR Exospace here, and we are back with more from the Reddit Whistleblower story. Now, if you've been following my channel, then you already know, but just very briefly, a molecular biologist came forward on an anonymous Reddit thread with a crazy post claiming to have worked on alien bodies. Now, the one thing I haven't really gotten into yet is the question and answer session that he did at the end, mainly because his account has been deleted, so it took me some time to track down all of his comments, all of his questions and answers. But I've done that now, so we're going to get into some of the answers that he provided to questions from just random people, and we're going to end with one of the answers that I personally think are one of the most compelling answers for why I do not think this is a hoax. Alright, so let's get into it. Question: the excretion of waste through their skin has been discussed by John Lear in the following interview. Provides a link to the interview. Regarding the event that occurred in Varginha, Brazil, which I had discussed at length in my own videos, the mention of a terrible smell of ammonia, coupled with the soldier's death through a form of severe sepsis, would appear to be consistent with this report concerning their digestive system. OP: the creature I googled bears little resemblance to what I saw, but I don't claim to know them all. Interesting, and I actually picked up on that when I was reading this original post, because the morphology that he describes doesn't exactly sound like the Varginha alien. It's really just that smell of ammonia that caught my attention that really connects some of those dots. But the actual physical resemblance that he's describing doesn't quite sound like what they described in Varginha. Good to know that he pointed that out here. All right, next question. Cross-posted to the UFO thread, you seem legitimate in your reasoning and concerns, and this type of post deserves to be in front of a bigger audience. Definitely appreciate the time and effort you put into this. OP's reply: at first I wanted to write there, but since my specialty is aliens and not UFO, I figured this would make more sense. All right, so this is a good point here. He actually posted to the alien thread on purpose because he doesn't have any like propulsion or mechanics or physics experience by his own description, so he wasn't really claiming to be an expert in UFOs. His specialty was the study of alien morphology, and that's what he's sticking to here, so that reply kind of makes sense. All right, here's another one. OP seems to say the Greys were genetically designed using animal genes from Earth as well as unknown genes. Does that mean that Greys were created specifically for interacting with humankind? Are Greys the middlemen between humanity and an unknown group? OP's answer: the hypothesis is that they were created to perform their tasks and be able to survive with only local resources. They must therefore be able to metabolize local organic resources. So that kind of supports this chimera theory that they were combined with animal and human DNA to be able to consume resources here on Earth. So they're getting it from somewhere. And here's where we get into the conspiracy side of things a little bit. So a lot of people in the comments section are actually worried about this person's identity. If this is a real threat and this guy is coming forward with government whistleblower secrets, the government might not take too kindly to him posting on this Reddit thread. So one of the questions was, or not really a question, but a comment: bro, you better have a VPN. Government gets a hold of these keywords and you're done. OP: I do. I'm not sure that VPN is going to be enough to hide like someone with NSA or CIA level of intelligence and spying apparatus, but it's at least trying to take some precautions. This is fascinating. Thank you so much for posting. Although my medical terminology is lacking, I did notice that you said that they're receptive to bovine growth hormones. Do you think that there's any relation to the cattle mutilations and their nourishment? OP's answer: I can't say with absolute certainty. It's easier to collect and purify a raw material than to synthesize it, at least with our technology. If you want to create a new organism, you need nucleic acids, amino acids, and lipids, which are found in large quantities in all animals. All right, so in an earlier video, I talked about how I didn't want to really get into the cattle mutilation stuff because that sounds kind of conspiracy theory to me. I hadn't seen this post at that time. I don't know, that really seems like conjecture to me. I don't really see anything in his original post to support cattle mutilation as a form of nourishment for these. Like I just said, though, at least they're getting their nourishment from somewhere. I don't know where exactly, so I don't know. I don't really have any evidence there, so I don't want to dive too deep into that part, but he answered the question, so that's why we're talking about it. All right, now here's a pretty legitimate question, I think. Was any work done to study their metabolome? I work as a statistician in metabolomics. We specifically use the chemocentric approach to metabolomics. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I think I am. We've done some wacky studies, so I'd be curious if we ever process any samples that were EBO in origin. We frequently do work with the Department of Defense, DARPA. For those saying it's a LARP, I disagree. This was too technical to be a LARP. This checks out with some other information we suspect to be true regarding the Greys and possibly cow mutilations. There it comes up again. Bovine serum is a very valuable resource and is being studied and used to try and create meat in a lab with in vivo research. OP, thank you for posting. Fantastic post, shared it with a ton of people. Last question, did they have a tongue? Your post seems to indicate that they don't due to the way that they digest their food and communicate, but I just thought I'd ask in case. The lack of teeth, small lips, lack of vocal cords, and their minimal digestive system seems to suggest that these entities do not possess a tongue. OP's answer: keep in mind that the proteome knowledge is far from being comparable to what is known for humans. The main research priority was to identify the proteome of nodules in the central lobe of the brain. If there is any research on the metabolome, it will undoubtedly be in these structures as a priority. Confirmed, they have no tongue. All right, so we received confirmation from this guy that pretty much every aspect of the consumption of food is considered vestigial in these creatures. So just basically on a diet of like a protein smoothie all the time. So they don't really need to be able to chew. They have no tongue. They don't really need to be able to taste. I don't know why their tongue would be removed unless to support this idea that they're just these kind of organic drones. Because even if I was this unfeeling alien that didn't have any kind of loyalty to individuality as a concept, I would still want to enjoy the taste of my food. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But I'm not an alien. Okay, now this is where we get back into the conspiracy stuff just a little bit here. OP says, I have received some very strange and somewhat disconcerting private messages. Please treat this text as what it is, just words on a screen, and don't do anything you will regret. I will leave for the evening, although it is still early. I specify that the passage on religion is third-hand information and should not be your new gospel. I will probably have time to answer more questions later. So this is where he gets into, I think he was starting to get some comments from people reading this post and starting to message him directly, and it started to maybe get a little weird. I think that's what he's implying here. I don't think he's talking about messages that he got from the moderators. I think he's just getting private messages from people reading the stuff in the thread and probably getting comments similar to some of the ones I've received on my videos. And then again, he also reiterates here that this idea about the religion of their belief system is just a document that he read. He claimed in his original post that this is just a third-hand, second-hand account of something that he read in a document, so you can't really confirm its validity. But importantly, he says this should not be your new gospel. He's kind of approaching this the same way that, like I've said, scientists do, which is treat everything with a healthy degree of skepticism and don't just take my word for it. Kind of interesting how he sticks with that theme, isn't it? Okay, so some of these comments I've actually discussed in previous videos, so I'm just going to gloss over them pretty quickly, but he does reiterate this idea that these creatures are disposable, unable to live independently without technological support, and that they're ephemeral. And then he also says, I haven't come forward with the Senate Select Commission. I haven't come forward publicly, so I don't want to repeat things here, but he does mention that in these comments. Okay, now this one is really, really interesting. Okay, one of the questions he gets is, can they communicate through telepathy? And then he goes into a bunch, I think this is an edited post from after the original question, but OP's answer is that it's speculated that nodules in the central lobe of the brain could be used for this, but I don't see how it could be possible. So again, he's talking about what I think are inorganic nodules that allow them to interact with their technology that are basically hardwired into the brain, kind of this inorganic organic fusion. He doesn't really get specific about whether or not it's telepathy. I think it would seem like telepathy to us because we don't have the ability to communicate with technology in that manner, but it would seem like telepathy. They're not pushing buttons on their spaceship necessarily. They're just, the way that we would perceive it, they're just telling their technology what to do rather than interacting with it with their hands or pushing buttons or touching a screen. Kind of interesting. Okay, and this is where we get to the point again where he's starting to run into problems. Now, he said he's using a VPN, so I don't know if the VPN is giving him issues with trying to log into his Reddit thread, or if you dive deeper into the conspiracy stuff, maybe the government is starting to realize that he's doing this. And I don't know how much of a conspiracy theory that is. If you take it at face value that these programs really do exist and the intelligence agencies are involved, wouldn't they be monitoring threads like this to filter out whistleblowers and shut them down as quickly as possible? Conspiracy theory, maybe. Illogical, not really. So he just says, test. Reddit having trouble when I attempt to check your profile. So he's having trouble logging in. Some of his posts are getting deleted by this point. Okay, here's another question. You mentioned having to read literature on their culture. Can you expand on that? What is their culture? Does it shed light on why they're here, where they came from? OP's answer. I replied to one comment with the same info. Anyway, their culture is seemingly centered on the fulfillment of their religious motivation. Essentially, their religious motivation being the cultivation of this kind of apotheosis effect of intelligent life. And we get another question here about the morphology and biology of these creatures, and it's a long post, but essentially they're asking, you mentioned that the specimen has no vocal cords. Do they communicate via sound from a specialized organ, and where would it be? OP's answer, vocal cords. This detail is in the section of the respiratory system. Vocalization is produced by vibration of the wall membrane at the junction between the two air sacs. I specified that the two biospheres have a common origin, probably panspermia. And then there's also a question in here about DNA. Now keep in mind that this guy's claiming to be a molecular biologist, right? So he responds here, 3 strands of DNA are just imagination. Imagine the steric hindrance of such a structure. To be honest, I don't know what the hell steric hindrance means. Let's look that up. Any of several effects most common in organic chemistry in which the structure or reactivity of a molecule is affected by the physical size and proximity of neighboring parts of the molecule. That's a little bit vague. Let's see this one. Steric hindrance at a given atom in a molecule is the congestion caused by the physical presence of the surrounding ligands, which may slow down or prevent reaction. So I think what it's getting at here is that it's just three strands of DNA rather than the 2 strands of our double helix would just be too big to be effective. Steric hindrance is a consequence of steric effects. Steric hindrance is the slowing of chemical reactions due to steric bulk. So yeah, basically what he's saying here is that 3 strands on a DNA strand would be just massively complex and like too difficult to be functional, or too complex to be functional rather. Interesting, you know. Keep in mind, these are question and answers that are happening in real time. One of the comments that I keep getting most frequently in my videos are that this is just a really effective user of AI or a chatbot or something. Aside from just going to watch the video that I already made on that topic, keep in mind, this guy is replying to questions in real time with stuff that's very complex and would be very difficult to mimic with an AI in a short time frame. So he also says here the digestive system is undoubtedly designed in this way to limit autonomy. That's kind of an interesting claim, isn't it? He's saying that the digestive system is designed on purpose, meaning that they're designed to be dependent on the technology rather than like an individual, which I don't know. That's kind of an odd statement. Are they designed on purpose, or is that just a byproduct of that kind of religious philosophy and lack of individualism in this whatever's motivating them? I don't know. Designed that way on purpose to limit their autonomy. That might be a conclusion that I don't know is supported by what he said so far. Interesting though. Some of these answers, I don't know. I can't imagine that ChatGPT or something would be able to come up with answers just really quick like that. It doesn't make sense to me. Take this one for instance. If the blood is copper based, why is it brown and not a blue or green color? I'm assuming this based on our red blood being iron based. My brother asked and I said I have no idea, but I can ask. This is incredible. Thank you. Answer. It's brown because if you mix red blood cells, yellow, plasma, and green, copper oxide, you get brown. That's interesting. Like, how would you come up with that? You'd have to have a knowledge of like how colors mix with each other to be able to just like pop out an answer like that. Which suggests that it was premeditated, that already thought of this, and so he had the answer ready and tailor-made. I don't know. Here's another one. Did you pick up info as to who is creating the Greys and or what their purpose is? Also, others have mentioned the info about their culture and religion. I'd be interested in that as well. If you and this information are real, thank you for taking the risk to share. If you're a lying piece of shit, fuck you, lol. Answer. All I know is that they must have been created here. There is speculation that these creatures can be controlled remotely like drones. Maybe they are avatars like in the movie of the same name. That's interesting. So maybe those nodules in their brain aren't necessarily as much for them to interact with their technology as it is for someone somewhere else to pilot them remotely. I don't know. Interesting. Have you heard of genetic engineering involving people and EBOs, aka hybrid research? Answer. EBOs are hybrids between 2 biospheres. Question. Interesting. Can you discern anything about their longevity from what you saw? Length of telomeres? What does their ribosome look like? What kind of athletic ability would they be capable of? Most importantly, were they easy to cut or pierce? What about the suit? Answer. My comment on longevity is extrapolation only. I should have clarified. There is no telomere because their chromosomes are circular, like a plasmid. Their ribosome look like a regular ribosome, at least functionally. It's not the focus of research to do crystallography, fortunately. Their muscles are mostly type 1 fibers, so they're physically very weak. Okay, now I'm going to end it here, but this is where it gets to the question and answer that really supports my idea that this is not a hoax. Question. I have no idea if this is real or fake. Answer. You shouldn't blindly believe me, and I don't expect you to. It's the sensible thing to do in this situation. After all, I'm only offering a tall tale and anonymity. The fact that you are present on this forum, which deals with alien life, tells me that you are questioning the very nature of reality. I only hope that the information I offer can give a new perspective and new ideas. Now, the reason I find that comment very compelling is that's what I've been saying throughout all of these videos, is that you should not take this at blind faith. And that is how scientists talk. You have to evaluate the evidence, and you have to realize with some degree of skeptic analysis here that this dude is posting randomly, anonymously on a Reddit thread. This is not David Grush coming forward with classified documents that he's submitting to Congress and testifying in congressional hearings, closed-door hearings. This is somebody posting on a Reddit thread. So take it for what it's worth. But he doesn't come forward here and say, no, I know what I'm talking about. I'm the real deal. Trust me. He's saying you should not blindly believe me, and I don't expect you to. It's the sensible thing to do in this situation. Does that really sound like somebody who's just trying to fool a bunch of people? I don't know. take what you want from this. I just found it really interesting to read through these comments and these question and answers, mainly because I get so many people in the comment section that would just want to believe that this is AI. And not to dismiss that idea, because it's certainly a possibility, but I think these comments are coming from people who haven't really used AI all that much and are vastly extrapolating what these things are actually capable of. I mean, they're just not that smart yet to be able to go through this many questions and answers on the fly with these kind of replies. They just aren't. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you still think this is an elaborate hoax or a very creative use of artificial intelligence, let me know. If you think this guy's a real deal, let me know too. But just try to keep an open mind here, because we don't know. Even according to the guy himself, you shouldn't trust this stuff blindly. Just evaluate the evidence for what it is and the standard of evidence that we have, the quality of evidence. So anyways, I'll leave it at that. If you haven't liked or subscribed to the videos yet, please do so I can continue bringing these videos to you, and I'll catch you on the next one.